Second watch.
Oh, time to get up.
All
No second
right.
watch.
Welcome everyone to the second watch. Thanks for joining us, joining the conversation this evening because we have a very special guest. Easily one of my favorite people in the industry, Rob Alderman, Pulp, Hummock Press, and the man behind Gods of the Forbidden North. Rob, how's it going tonight? Thanks for joining us.
It's going great. It's so nice to be here with you guys. I really appreciate you asking me to come on the show, Matt.
Yeah, well, I've been Gary and I have been wanting to do interviews and things like that, and this show that we're doing is trying to be kind of like this laid back, just real talk discussions about the industry, games, and hopefully talk about stuff that's not Wizards of the Coast related. And we want to. I know I had to bring it up, and we wanted to.
We're not even a minute in, bro.
I know
it's not even a minute in.
But highlight indie creators is really, and for people watching, and we get a lot of actually people on Twitter that watch the show at this point, and so people who don't know, Gods of the Forbidden North is a award-winning game. So and any, which is awesome. So I don't know. Let's just kind of get into it. What is Gods of the Forbidden North?
Well, it's not. It's like it's just a vanity project. No, it's my love letter to the hobby. Like you guys, playing since I was a kid. Started Boy Scouts in America. Never got past tenderfoot. And basically all the cool kids, I say cool here, situationally speaking, cool kids at the time that were a little older than me and I'd looked up to in the scout troop because my dad was in the Army, so I was on bases, so all the scoutmasters were like Army Rangers. So it was like kind of different than what you think of probably. It was always like, let's go out on the range, like super hua, so all their sons had to go, So we'd got camping, and there'd always be like this like group of like the cool kids in the group who were playing AD&D. The first cover version, really cool, and I love it's iconic of second edition was what they were playing at the time, and this was like 89ish, 90, somewhere around there. And I wanted to play, so I'd hang around the tent listening and watching. And one time they finally told me, hey, you can play one of our hirelings. I didn't know what that meant, but I was like first level, and they were all like 9th, 7th level men, and they like basically were just putting me in my place. And I went out there and like carried some guy's thing, like the coconut guy from Monty Python. Right. And basically, like they killed me off. They told me to go in. They knew I'd get killed, and they laughed at me. And then I went back out in the circle of like shame. And like so, I've been playing since then. Nice. And I finally just was started writing something on the side. I got tired of writing literary snobby fiction and poetry that pleasing some audience of creatives in the academic field that I just kind of can't stand sometimes. I'm being perfectly honest. Don't tell anyone. And I just said, I want to write something for fun, and this is kind of what started to emerge and over a few years. And this wasn't what I was thinking. It was sort of something I was doing on the side while I was trying to write something fun. And then I ended up liking this way better than the stuff. So that's kind of what happened. So anyway, I guess the short answer, which I should have gave up front was
hey, real quick hello to people joining chat. How's it going, guys? Thanks for being here. I'm curious, real cool. as you guys are, when you were doing this on the side, what was it? The Forbidden North, the mountains, the ice. Is that just a kind of a setting that you liked, or was there a reason? What was the thought behind that?
Dude, I'm
Just
like me and my brother were like raised on like TV, like Comedy Central and every single awesome movie that you probably loved and hated in the 80s and 90s. So basically, like we just we'd like have conversations in quotations, like quoting stuff like back and forth, kids in the hall, all that kind of stuff. I even have a
right.
Kid in the Hall joke in volume 2, by the way. But anyway, you gotta look for it. I'm not gonna tell you where it is, but you'll know it if you know. So anyway. But we just, we just loved all those types of movies. So like Masters of the Universe,
Oh,
um,
that's on
Conan the
Tubi.
Destroyer, everyone's favorite of the two. Like, like so. I guess like it was sort of like, okay, I gotta have like an evil cackling skull Skeletor type Mumra guy. And like that's kind of how it started. And I just sort of envisioned this like misty, icy lake, like the Conan the Destroyer castle, but like kind of mixed with Castle Grayskull or
Yeah.
Skeletor's Fortress, whatever. I can blank on the name. I'm tired, but so I just kind of saw it as like I got to have a skull god Skeletor figure, like Balor. There was a guy named Balor in Myth the Fallen Lords. I used to love him.
hmm
Soul
Well, I think
blinded
it has
up
a
his
great.
face.
I think it has a great look, and it really like kind of captures that you're always cold kind of. You know what I mean? That sort
Yeah.
of. Yeah. So I had props, and I
I
got
got
your
this.
map.
I got
Oh
the map in
yeah.
the mail. Yeah, 350 is to join the VIP. Right? Is that still going?
It's $2.99. Yeah, I think
Oh,
it's
it's
two
two
ninety
ninety
nine.
nine.
I think it's two ninety
Yeah,
nine. Yeah.
and
It
yeah,
was
you get
three
this is.
fifty for you, Matt.
Yeah, I know. Well, whatever. This is not a paper map. This is actually like what, nylon or something. It's sturdy. It's awesome. It's beautiful. This is the Forbidden North.
Yeah.
So so did this start off? And I think I know the answer to this question because I remember when I first encountered you and your work, you were actually on the Basic Experts live stream when he was doing Monday night
Hey,
streams.
John. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And you had mentioned something about Hero Quest, and I was like, Hero
Oh
Quest for the
yeah.
win. Yeah. So so was this project originally just going to be like a mega dungeon and then like a village of Hamlet, or did you plan on basically writing the OSR like trilogy that's like Lord of the Rings? Because I will be getting into this. There is so much friggin' lore and world building. This is not your mom's like hex crawl. Like there is stuff going on. It's really it's
Well,
really impressive. Like seriously.
thank
So
you.
was that like your goal, or were you just like
No.
start off as a mega dungeon and it just sort of got bigger?
I mean, my favorite product. I think I got a bunch of them, but like the one that like I've ran the most by far, like, and I love it is they call it Rapanathuk. I call it Rapanathuk. I'm one of those guys. Tomato, tomato. So like I I thought of it. If you know the first version of Necromancer games is that
I
Mega Dungeon
played
was
I played it. I played it.
okay. Yeah, so the three little booklets, right? It was generic, drop in the dungeon,
Yep.
and that's what it was supposed to be. So that was my original idea, was to write this mega dungeon like that. And what happened is I sort of was like, okay, I want to do a little bit more. I'll have sort of like just one location that kind of gets you there. Like you said, the Hamlet, the Moat House sort of location, and that was the Fort Eichenvar
Oh,
location,
okay.
like
Yep.
chapter 6 or 7 in the first book, and Bog Ruins of Fort Eichenbar. And that was actually the first thing I wrote. And the second thing I think I wrote was the actual last chapter, which hasn't appeared yet. Which I think you may have actually read an old rough draft of, possibly. Yeah,
I have the Tesseract
yeah,
is wild,
yeah.
folks. That's going to be in volume 3. It is wild.
Yeah, put that like so. I was supposed to have all that as part of just the dungeon, and what happened was, of course, some people said, "Well, this guy didn't have a great editor, or he got too crazy, and he just kept going." And someone should have told him, "Stop! but he didn't. And no one was there because he's a third-party creator with nothing. No one accountable. No one can hold him to the fire, you know?
Yep.
So I just kept
Yeah,
going
yeah.
and going. And yeah, I'm a creative writer by trade. So I'm thinking of like the novel writing, like not like in the sense of how I present the material, but just in the sense of like, I mean, you make a character, you have a lot of information on that character that you may not share with your audience, that you just, to really see that person in your head, to distinguish them. And so that's sort of my training. So whenever I get into stuff, I start saying, well, what are all the details? Why are the slavers of Shun here? What brought them here to their banditry ways? Because I can understand them more, present them more, because that's just what we do. And I of course never intended to share any of this, like just like a novel, but I had to start answering questions like, well, what's the slavers of Shun? Like, because I had the name before I figured out what that meant.
Oh, right. Of course. Yeah. You're like looking around the room and you see a couple words and you're like, you mash them together like, oh, that's what they are.
All right. It just sounds good when it rolls off the tongue, I come up with a reason later.
Yeah.
So I would start jotting down notes of like what that was or what this was. And then I started realizing some of this contradicted each other. Some of it seemed to go well together, and it just sort of turned into like, well, let me try to work this out in the background, and so I sort of had my Silmarillion, my world document kind of in the background. I was trying to piece it together, and then one change would cause another change. And then before long, I was working more on that than I was on the locations. And then I would stop and go, okay, get back to the dungeon. And, I'd start doing it. And then all of a sudden back to it. And it became like this beach thing, back and forth. And then I started finding that the world was so compelling after, like, I put it away at one point, like a couple months go by and forget about it. It's just this thing you're doing, and this is before the Kickstarter and everything. So then I come back and I pick it up and I start reading it, and I hadn't read it in a while. And I started going, whoa, like, this is pretty cool. Like, if I saw it like a way as I am a player, like if I had picked it up and bought it or something. And I was like, this is really great. Like, I would want to buy this. And I just went, And then it just, maybe I should pursue this more, and that's kind of what happened. And it just grew. Like, I've been working on it for a few years before I kickstarted the first volume, like.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought, I was under the impression you, like, obviously it had been started and then the Kickstarter was sort of like, okay, this is going to help me get the art to finish it. So this has been okay. So this really has been an odyssey.
I think it's been 8 or 9 years at least.
Wow.
Publicly, it's been like
I just
3.
want to, for those. Yeah. So this is volume 1, everybody. This is volume 1. Okay. All right.
Sorry, it's so big.
Here's volume 2, and I gotta do this.
Wow.
Okay, and then volume 3, we're looking at So this is like, I mean, I say this at the risk of overstatement, but I do really think this is kind of like a Lord of the Rings kind of campaign. It's not just a hex crawl. It's not just a series of dungeons or whatever, or a mega dungeon. I mean, there is like all this lore with the Skull Lord, the natives of the Forbidden North, all this stuff, and like you were just kind of describing, their inner workings. Like, there's a lot you can do with this, and I think players will get years. I plan on running it, but I want to get the third one first so I can have it all.
Matt is so like, I need to read it. I'm gonna read it twice this weekend and maybe run a few fights, and I should be ready by mid-September. I don't know. We'll talk about it. That's how Matt decides to run games. I do. I read through the very beginning of the first volume, and then kind of, picked parts of lore and things to read. I have not read through the whole thing.
Yeah,
but this looks like it can be played several different ways. You can sandbox it. There seems to be a story path. What is your suggestion? How did you envision this would be played? What happens if you have a TPK 5 sessions into the, you know what I mean? How does it work?
I mean, if you have a TPK, you close the book, you fold your screen, and you don't say anything. you put everything away, and what happens is someone will go, well, what now? And you just say, you're unworthy, and then
You're dead.
clearly.
Yeah, this is about gods of the Forbidden North, not
Yeah,
dead
you
people
make
of the
it-
Forbidden
you
North.
shame the players as they walk out of your house. Get into their
No.
Ford Pintos and drive back to their sad lives. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No. That's I used to sass my players. They kind of love hate me, but
Yeah.
it's all good fun. But no, I love sandboxes. That's what I like. When I run Rapanathuk, I've got like 300 pages on my Roll20 thing that I got prepped for it. Like I showed it to one of my old players who wanted to run it. And he's not playing anymore. And he's played it like 6-7 times. And he goes, "It's a work of art." Like all the dynamic lighting. I like that. I like having a huge sandbox and then just letting the players do what they want. Because every time you play, it's different. It's so much fun. And so I that's my preferred way to play these types of things. That's what I was trying to write it as. But I also recognize that so many people, as you both know, like they've got busy lives, and sometimes they don't, they just want to get their once a month in or whatever, and they want to just kind of get to the action. So I said, well, adventure paths are exciting and stuff. People like them. So if I could probably write this in a way that you could do both. So I wrote it with like thinking like of Skyrim in the back of my head, like that type of a game where it's an open world game theoretically, but there is like this story carrot, like go here next, dum dum, if you can't think of anything else. And that's kind of there, right? Each little location, if you read it, kind of strings you to the next one, and it's supposed to go that way all the way to the end of volume 3 if you want to run it that way. But you don't have to, like you can go and have fun. I have one group I know right now that's running it. They're using 5e rules. It's my friend, and his name's Byron, and they're all like 11th level, and they haven't even gotten out of Valkengard and Skullberg. Like they've just literally like they just stay in the city.
That's great, though.
Yeah, so they haven't done any of the dungeons, and they're scared.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I guess
so. I may not do it now, but you mentioned that your players are running it using 5e. And a little bit, if somebody would remind me that we need to talk about why Old School Essentials is the perfect game to use, Matt, to run this. And everybody would love to use the OSC rule set because it's so good. Anyway, go on, Matt.
Well, this is an OSR. No, this is a OSR. You wrote it with OSC in mind, right? But you can use Dragon Slayer. You can use Lamentations of the Flame Princess if you wanted. Of course, I think that'd make this even harder, frankly. But yeah, that's what's really nice about this. And you were talking about the adventure path too, and as well as the sandbox. Looking at the layout, it's very similar to OSC's layout. This is actually pretty accessible. Like this is like one of the things that kind of gets on my nerves with the OSR, and I'm going to say this, is sometimes I think they assume you know how to play a game and you already kind of understand a lot of the concepts contained in whatever product they're trying to sell, which, arguably, I mean, if you're in the indie scene, you do know this, you don't need that communicated, but I do think that ends up creating a barrier for people who may be interested in the OSR and not know. You actually have, and this is in both books, both volumes that I have, a chapter where it's like how to read this book. Was that like what was your thoughts when you incorporated that? Like, was that something you were thinking about? Like, hey, I want to challenge.
I just thought it was standard best practice. Like I was trying to what are some of the best practices I've seen to date, in the books I haven't read them all, but the books that I've read, I always thought Goodman Games did a really great job. They would always, if you look at their old like 3rd edition modules, like 335, they'd always like summarize everything in the back of each chapter. And I was like, that's always stuck with me since they did that. And that's where I ripped that off. Even their format really by each encounter, I always thought Goodman was pretty good overall, especially with the more bloated systems, like third edition. But it was good to have that kind of like order imposed. I know not everyone likes that kind of thing, but I just felt that like, you can't please everyone. That's probably a better way to do it than, I haven't seen anyone really truly reinvent the wheel there, in my opinion. But
Yeah.
and then in terms of the new players, it's just the same thing. It's like making it as referee / player friendly, as possible. That's what it's for, right? Running it. So I give the referee as many tools as possible. I know the OSR, I had really like labored over like, should I include rules for how I balance the encounters? I know that's like a devil word or whatever in the OSR.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, at one hand they say that, but then they'll say this is designed for, well, how'd you design it then? Right? Like there had to be something you did. Well, I went,
Yeah.
so I was like, there's gotta be some old rules for this somewhere. And it sure enough, good old Cyclopedia, the greatest product ever made. There it was.
Oh,
they have this
we're
like
about to
breakdown.
have
Of
this.
course, that's BX, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Aha. See, we have an ongoing dispute. He likes OSC. I say I don't need OSC. I got this. So so he was hoping you'd be on his side, but I think
Your
you're on both
books
sides.
literally have the old school essential stamp on it. I thought for sure I was gonna win this argument tonight. Yeah, I will say one thing. Physically I only buy I buy very few physical books actually. Um your book is really usable, even in PDF form, because that's how I have it. And I know a lot of guys, I'm sure that very few people are thinking about that when they put their books together these days. I know they're thinking, they might be thinking about something else, but I think just the way it's formatted in general, as I'm flipping through, it's just a really usable product. And I think that's, the old school essentials, kind of thing going on, because Rule Cyclopedia is not easy to use, but your book is incredibly uh, easy to use. And did you just, was that where did you say that the format is from Goodman Games? The entire?
I mean, like, that's where that idea came from originally. I mean, obviously, I've looked
Yeah.
at other products because some do well. Like 5e's got some that are like, I think Tomb of Annihilation's pretty well laid out. Like if you read that one, like, I'm not as short and sweet on the descriptions as Gavin or the Tomb of Annihilation.
Right.
But what I am is there's no mix up of what you need and what like what you can delay on. Like I like, some people don't like box text, they get real mad. I'm like, even if you don't have to read it exactly, but just having like, this is what they see right away there. If you want to go do, like, that's what that signals to them. Like it's a tech writing thing,
Yeah, well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I think there's been a shift away from that, and you just like with Shadow Dark, it's just like bullet points or something, and it's not even a complete sentence, right? It's just sort of like a bunch of words that this is what's in this room, and I guess the game master is expected to just sort of like use that to create their own thing, but and this kind of gets into the mega dungeon stuff. I sort of feel like we need to go back to that, because I think I'm running Temple of Elemental Evil, and the only real interesting encounters in that module are the temples, because there's like these crazy things going on in the temples. Everything else, it's just sort of like these generic rooms with factions in them. And to me, a mega dungeon is about exploration and that mystery about what it is that you're exploring. And I think those text boxes are how you communicate clues and whatnot to the players. And I think without that, you're kind of, well, I'll tell you what typically happens. I describe something and I get really excited about it. And then you see this, that, and the other thing. What do you do? And then it's like crickets.
Yep.
And then you see a tumbleweed go by. And you're just like, okay, guys, what are you doing?
You dodge. Like last Starfighter, remember that?
Yeah. But what going back to the layout thing though, at the end of every chapter, you do have like this recap and including a list of all the XP that's available, XP and gold that's available. And there's something on the Kickstarter for Volume 3. This is why one of the reasons why you're here to promote that Kickstarter.
Oh, yeah. Kickstarter.
Yeah.
What was the number in total XP available at the end of all three?
10.5 million experience points. Yeah, because you have to. It's not because I'm like, yeah, let's do 10 million. It's like if you have a part, I was like, okay, like if I'm doing this product, like technically, this is one thing that, by the way, I could go on for an hour on. As I got some flack in the beginning because I said this is designed for 7 characters, and I had to like change it when I did a second revision to 6 to 8 characters. Even then, I got flack. They're like 7. That's so precise. Blah blah. And I was like, what? I was like, it's in between 6 and 8. That's what I said. So I go to 6 and 8. Then I start getting criticized at this point. I start getting criticized, and they're like, well, who can find 6 players? Who can find 8? I heard that over and over and over again. And I'm like, all right, guys. And I put my nerd glass on, and you go into old school essentials. It literally says in the rules, this is designed for 6 to 8 player characters. It says that. It says that. So if you don't have that many, then you're subpar. But like that's what it says. So I had to like explain it. Finally, I was like, you know what? I don't care. Just ignore it.
Right.
So that is the one thing about whether it's OSR or not, just some people just gotta find a thing and they gotta pick. And I'm sorry, man. I'm really sorry that you have to
it's like it's what you do. You have to just deal with it no matter what. We're gamers, right? Everyone argues over this stuff. But so then like I was like, okay, well, at the end of this, what do I want to wind up with? Well, I'm like, I really want this to like I want everyone to actually be able to make 14th level in their class. Like I want them to hit whatever the 20th level of the game, 14th level. And so I was like, so the druid has the most experience points out of everybody. I'm like, if we had a party of all druids, and if you go multiply it out, it's like 8 of them or 7 of them or whatever. It's like 10.5 million, whatever it is. So that's where I came. I was like, okay, that's the number I'm going for. So I got to have that. So theoretically, a group of druids could conceivably all become, although they really couldn't because they have to kill each other. If you want to be really old school, there can be only one.
Right. Only one. Right.
But yeah, theoretically, they could all hit 14th level. And so that's what I did. So I don't know if that's exactly what it'll be by the end. I'm still making those decisions, but it should be pretty close. It should be somewhere at 10, 11 million range.
Yeah, well, I saw that number flash across the screen from the Kickstarter video promo. I was like, oh my God, this is a huge campaign. This is so huge. I really don't think there's anything. I don't think there's anything really like it. I think the closest thing we've had, the industry, whatever had is like Dragonlance back in like the 80s and 90s, as far as like this like expansive campaign thing. Against the Giants, maybe. I don't know. Like this is like quite the undertaking. So let's talk about
Kickstarter.
Well, why don't you I was just going to say, let's talk about each volume, but let's start with volume 3, what you're kickstarting. It starts on Tuesday.
It does, 9 a.m. Eastern.
I'm already there. I'll be there.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I was clearing my morning. I was like, all right. And I always do like the same like warm-up ritual, which is like 3 days out. I start posting like Charge of the Rohirrim like GIFs. Like who will come? Who will, so few.
Yeah.
And as I get closer, it gets closer to the charge the last hour. It's like, it's so funny, but I don't know. It's just fun. It pumps you up. You start getting pumped up. You're like, yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, it's going to be a 30-day Kickstarter,
like
right?
So it goes to March 6th, Thursday, because you always do Tuesday, Thursday.
Oh, okay.
because I don't know if you know what the
I did
so
not know this. There's
so
like
I learned this the first time before I launched my first campaign, and there's a formula that you follow to run a really that will set you up for success. You still have a lot of work to do, but one of the things you do is you always launch on the Tuesday, usually around 9 a.m. Eastern, somewhere between there. There's debate on what the exact hour that's best, but the reason, and then you end on a Thursday. And the reason is because, like, let's say you're go to work, typical person. Monday, everyone's like, "Oh crap, I got to get a handle on my work." They don't roam the internet as much. And Friday, they're
right.
too busy trying to finish everything up to go home, and they want to get out. So they don't want to waste time unless they're really stuck. So usually Tuesday through Thursday is the days that they are most likely combing the internet with their little pretending to work. And so, and now maybe like because like all the projects that do that, now Kickstarter backers intentionally go those days because they know those are the days they launch. So maybe it's like a feedback loop, who knows? But that's what they do. So you launch like a Tuesday, and you're trying to time it so that the UK is still at work, where they could potentially be combing the internet. The Eastern United States is just waking up or just getting settled in their seat. And then everybody in the Pacific will go, "Holy crap, what are we missing?" Like 3 hours later. So that's sort of the idea. And then Thursday, you try to hang out a little longer so that you don't want UK to go to bed until they're there whenever it ends. So you try to do it later. But, so everyone does a little different. Like Alex Macris did a 12 p.m. launch. I've heard 12 p.m. is supposed to be the best hour. For me, it's got to be 9 a.m. If I do 12, the first 3 hours are like your head just flies off and you're just getting so many messages and so much is happening. And I've got this like Excel sheet where I've got all these like Facebook groups and then Reddit forums. And I go, and even though I've got ads going and I'm running them and they're pumping them out and getting them on everyone's face and Facebook over and over again until you hate me, I basically like go into each of these things and I've pre-asked permission. I got like my green lines are like, these are the ones I got to go in and drop my pre-plugged thing. And I'm going boom, 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 just jumping from group to group to group to group. And then I go to my oranges and I'm like, please let me post. Please let me post. Please let me post.
Right.
I try to make it sound personalized and it isn't. And then the red ones are the ones that said, screw you, we don't want any spam. So then I'm like, don't ever go to those. I just keep an eye out for them so I don't accidentally do it there. And they so, and then that's what you're doing. And like that first 3-4 hours is just like, it's a surge of like activity and excitement, but also like exhausting work. So anyway,
sure.
so like until like 1 p.m. and then I got to teach that day at 1 p.m. So then that's going to be my time to break where I go, screw this. I'm not going to go do something else. Yeah. But
what grade do you teach?
I do university level. So
you're okay. Yeah. They're not paying it. You just don't go, bro. Just take a day for yourself, man. Hey, I used to work at a college. I didn't teach anybody anything, but I did work at a college, and you get lots of time off. I'm telling you,
right.
take a day for yourself, man.
I would take the day off that day, but the thing is, that's my first day of classes. So and I had to do it then, so I didn't really have a choice. So I was like, oh, it's just talking to syllabus, you just
yeah. Read this. Here's your syllabus. Checking your So what's volume 3 going to entail? Like what are
Castle Tharganon, baby. Darganon. It's literally, so there's a ton of hexes like the map you showed, and there's going to be another. That was a fine art heavy duty canvas map, and there's going to be a second one that's going to be for that we're going to actually have done for the next Kickstarter, not just as an add-on. So if you wanted to buy that, by the way, like you or the Underworld one, you could get them both, and they're going to be add-ons, but basically there's a whole map like the one that Matt just showed, and that map is a whole continent essentially, and it's got tons of hexes, tons of materials, multiple settlements, and then under that's a matching map for the Underworld. So it's volume 1, volume 2, surface, Underworld. But there's one hex that I haven't detailed at all, you know, except in mentioning it, and that's the Castle Tharganon's, which is the mega dungeon of the product, which I haven't gotten to. So Volume 3 is basically it's the lower halls of Tharganon, the upper halls of Tharganon. There's the Tower of Karak Varn, the Tower of Sorcery. There's the Tower of Therak Thor. There's the Tower of Darbindor, which is the throne hold, and Darbindor is 11 stories. The other two are 6. And then there's 2 dungeon levels below that are actually part of the construction of the castle. And then below that is a awesome level, which I'm really excited about. That Chris Cotgrove helped me write, and he loved the vision when I told him what I was trying to do. I'll tell you about that in a minute. And that's the Dark Pits of Gorgoroth, and that's like it was actually supposed to be part of Volume 2 originally, and I had to bump it because I was already at 530 pages. So I was like, yeah, I gotta boot that into Volume 3. So sorry, Gorgoroth, bye bye. But like that's like this winding tunnel system that was sort of part excavated, part tunneled by something that's down
nice.
there. And then below that is this huge, like sort of like Caverns of Thracia style, like under cabin that's been forgotten by time. And that's the Cyclopean City of Chaos, which is not exactly abandoned. And it is like it's like sort of like the wilderness of the third one. It is a weird alien bubble landscape where all the rules and laws of physics and everything don't apply at all anymore. And if that's the sort of what it is, and it's it was really heavily inspired by a lot of those types of like Lost World type places, but also a lot of more recent products. Like I really loved Monty Cook and his. I was growing up, I used to love him because I was a big Planescape fan, and he did a Arcana Evolved line, Arcana Unearthed line. I don't know if you remember that one back in the 3rd edition days, and he had this one really awesome adventure. It's one of my favorite adventure products, actually, and it was this Ruins of Serathis, this Ruins of Adventure, and it was like this. You eventually got to this lost city of towers, and literally that's kind of what this is. So a lot of odes to people, like, I've got a Death Trap dungeon that Gygax. This is sort of Monty Cook and his stuff that I grew up on, the weird planar kind of bizarre stuff. And I grew up on that D&D fantasy flavor particularly, and I've sort of withheld it to this point from everything I've written, but that's where I'm going to really like just unleash it and kind of go crazy. So that's sort of an ode to him in a sense because of how much he inspired me as a kid. And that's a huge gigantic. I mean, there's 21. There are like 635, 34 rooms in all the stuff I described to you, up until that city, that big pocket city. The pocket city has 21 tower dungeons, individual maps, and then it's huge. It is its own ecosystem, and it's all high level.
Wow.
It is designed for 13th, 14th level parties. Anything goes. We're not going to pull any punches. Not that I've been doing that anyway, but really going to pull. It's you got to be hard. You got to be smart. You got to have resources, and it just doesn't care. And it's going to be fun. But there's a lot of factions, a lot of good stuff, and a lot of weird stuff. And that's where it's going to kind of go. And then somewhere in that city is the monolithic Acropolis, which is like this step pyramid apocalypto style, which is one of the greatest movies of all time. And it's apocalypto with this floating green cube atop it. That's just like, what is that? And like, that's where Balor vanished. And like, you could get there and possibly get inside to find the end. So it's that's it. It's and a lot of it has been either drafted or written, and a lot of it's been written for years. I'm going to rewrite some of it because so much has happened in the years, and I'm going to come back to it at long last. All these years later, like I've been through like 9 years, and I was reading Tesseract of Time the other day, and I was like, oh, there's so much good stuff in here. But I was like, oh, there's so much more I can do with this and make it even better. So I'm like, right now that's kind of what I'm doing. So.
You've speaking of like all the writing, I mean, obviously, like you're the lead designer and done a lot of the writing, but you brought in some other writers too. Let's see, you had Victor Gorchev, Glenn Seal. I think I saw. Some of the other names are
Casey
escaping me because I
Christopherson,
too am a
City
little
of
tongue.
Brass. Hell yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Casey.
Yeah, it's been there's it's a tour de force. It's really awesome.
Glenn Seal wrote he drafted Children of the Green Light in the volume 2. It was 10,000 words when he gave it to me. It was like 50, 60,000 when I was done with it. But I mean, he sketched, and I was just like, this is great. But I was like, I got to make a Planescape style mystery investigator. Like, that's what I was doing with that. And I remember the old Monty Cook like adventures. Like, what were some of the they were some of my favorite ones were the ones with there was like one in that was actually based in the City of Doors, and they were kind of searching for this thing called the planarity or something. I don't know how to pronounce it, but planarity is I think how it's spelled. And um it was about ascending the believers of the source, and there's like this guy named Sojad Law Shredder who's like murdering everyone ritualistically so he can become a god. And like it was like the coolest adventure. It was so like dramatic. Most OSR guys would hate it because it's got like scripted points, but I thought it was great. So I was like, oh, I got to do that kind of, but I was going to make it a little more open and organic. And I was trying to do that with children,
Yeah.
which I think I accomplished. I think I made it where it's very plot point and you can get to it however you got to get to it. I tried to open it up a little more, but that was sort of an ode to that kind of style adventure. And Glenn Seal drafted that. And I didn't even know he did that much writing. I knew he'd done some, but I didn't even think of him like that. I thought of him as a layout guy / mapping guy is how I kind of view him.
Well,
and
when I saw his name pop up when I got volume 2, I was like, because I had the exact same impression about what he does. I just want to share this comment real quick from Ed. What this guy is doing, what so many of us dream of, writing for fun and world building, and one day decide to put it out there and people love it. And looking it up right now, might have to get this. Might. You will. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Will. But on that note, so it is a trilogy. Are the other 2 books going to be available as add-ons or something with the Kickstarter for the third, or they're just going to have to go to DriveThru?
Well, short answer, for the books, yeah. So there's basically like there's 3 types of past backers or past supporters, and those are people either bought PDF, the print-on-demand POD, which I call the standard edition, or the premium edition, which is the offset, Smith Sewn, all that stuff. So last Kickstarter, everyone bought volume 1 and 2 in one of those 3 formats. So all the returning people only need the 3rd book, probably, right? Like, so I have 3 options for returning backers, and it says that real clearly: 4 returning PDF backers, 4 returning POD, 4 returning offset, whatever you were. And so you go, oh, okay, that's me. Well, so everyone else, I'm assuming they don't have any of the books. So I'm doing the same 3 categories, but buying the whole trilogy. So you can pick up all 3 in PDF, POD, or the offset premium limited edition, whatever you want to call it, version, which I'm not going to have a storefront because I'm just a dude who's working, who's doing so I don't, basically I'm going to, if I can't order it, whatever, I'm not going to have it. So I bought like extras this last time. So like I'm going to have like 250 extra, but that was, they usually say like 50 or so get eaten up by screw ups in the mail or, that kind of thing. So I'll probably take the rest to like conventions and just try to offload them, there. But that's probably your best chance of getting it as the Kickstarter. So, So for the third, this is kind of cool. For the third, for the volume 3, once all 3 are done, if you're buying them all together, there's going to be a shrink wrapped slipcase with all 3 books in there. They're going to fit. It's the same company doing it, and basically, like, if you already got the books, like say Matt got the first 2 books. You're going to get the slipcase with the 3rd one. They have this little contraption they put in there that like fills the space, like a little cardboard type thing designed for that. So you'll get the slipcase and you'll get it in its size for your other 2 to slide in. So, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. I love slipcases. So that's awesome.
I wanted to jump back though. Like, it is a trilogy. I use that word, but I kind of like, I want to like tell people, and people are probably like, who cares? But like, all 3 books are really one book. Like in my head, they're just one book. I just had to break it up because obviously, here's your 1,000 whatever
Yeah.
page, I didn't want
Yeah.
that, so I had to break it up for legit, and I had to keep funding the art because the amount of art I wanted for it, basically I couldn't do it with one kick. So I was like, yeah, I got to do two more if I want to keep it at that level. And there's a lot of art, in it, and I spent a lot of money on it. And like
Yeah, art's fantastic.
to put it in perspective, Alexander Macris, it probably has the closest product in size. He has a rule book, so it's not an adventure, but it's the closest product in size and what it is. Like his Acts 2 books, if you guys remember last year, big
They're
hit.
great.
Yeah, they were. So each of his books are like about the same size as mine. They're like 400 or 500 page books, and they're all OSR books. And he said publicly that he spent 50,000 was his art budget. I spent 60 on the first two books on my art budget, and I'm going to spend another 20 to 30 on the last one. So I'm spending a lot of money on art, and it's black and white, but it's very quality, good art, and the layout's great. And I can't even fathom how much it costs to do full color fonts.
Jesus.
but it, I spent a lot of money on it, and that's probably part of the reason why I haven't made any money. It's because I'm doing all
I
these
love the art. I love the art looking through it, and I can go on a tangent forever about how uh, the art's what flavors the math. A lot of times these games are really, we've played the same game with 50 different names. Right? You roll a die, you add your bonus, and the art a lot of times that's what separates it. That's kind of that last little piece you need. That this is, yeah, I love the art in these books. I really
Thank
do.
you.
Money well spent. Money well spent.
Yeah, I just wanted to share some. This is from volume 2. I was like perusing it again today, and yeah, this is some of the art that you see. You got like these vistas, right? But then you got this cool filler art, all of which just like adds to what you've been reading. And you also get a look at the layout too. Like this
Yep.
is just really good.
Yeah.
Just really
It's an
good and easy to read.
incredibly usable book. Um, I just can't say. I mean, I
I love
haven't
that
used
picture.
it, although me and Matt have discussed a way that we could both use this. But yeah, I love this, man. I can't wait for
Thank you.
volume 3.
Yeah, Glenn Seal's a
Yeah.
layout guy. He did it was funny during production of the first one, really, because the second one was real easy because it was just doing the same. We didn't have to have any really discussions. It was just here's the stuff, you know what to do. But the first time,
Right.
my wife, she was the kind of in charge of that, Christine, and she's a professor too, and she basically turned around and she started dealing with Glenn, and I would occasionally start interjecting because it's my book, and then finally they both looked at me like, "That's enough." So, yes, wife, yes, Glenn. So I had to step out, and then they came back with this beautiful looking. Oh God, I was like, "This is amazing." So I like barely contributed to the layout. But I was also like really mentally exhausted because I'd finally finished the first volume and decided where I was. So I was it was really a blessing, if you will, in disguise. It was nice to kind of check out and come back. And it was like, I almost like cried, teared up, to be honest. Cause like, imagine like you're doing
Yeah.
something like this and then you see
Oh,
it, for the first time, like that. And, that first book's a
Yeah.
beautiful book. Like I was like, wow, I never thought it would look like this. And yeah, I remember I had to take a moment to just kind of go, this is way more important than anything else I'll do in life,
yeah.
except have children, like, and it's
Well,
just a kid.
I do have to say that this is such a, and I don't know every OSR game's background or what they're working with,
Yeah.
but there is a certain level of quality that I think there's people who are really good at making adventures, indie guys, but there's something where it's just like they kind of cap out at a certain level, and maybe it's because they don't have $60,000 for art. I don't know what the difference is, you know. Who knows what it is? But when you see something that's independent and looks this good, I mean, I would say this should be a challenge for, if you're making your own product, look at this and be as good as this, if not better, somehow by hook or crook. I mean, this is the bar, right? I feel like this is the bar for indie adventures, worlds kind of thing. It's
That's
great.
awesome, man.
I
I
can't say
I'll say
enough.
oh yeah, let me I guess like I'm not, I mean I've been pretty open about it. Like I'm actually in the hole right now. I haven't made any money. It's funny, as much as the Kickstarters did. It could be bad business management. It's very likely. It's possible. But honestly, like it's really like all joking aside, it's because I was like an editor of like an art, like literary magazine, like where I wasn't about making money. It's about making beautiful art. So like when I
Right,
approach this, I'm not sitting there going, ooh, this will make, ooh, like
right.
more like how does this need to look to really accomplish what I'm hoping it does? And so I don't think of it. And the business guy would be like, you're an idiot. What are you doing? Spend all this money on art. Pick one or two guys, work a deal out so you get way more for less. And that's like what a lot of them do. But like I
Yeah.
didn't do that. I was like, no, I want an eclectic mix. This guy's stuff matches this tone, like that's basically what I've been doing. So that's why I've spent so much, is because I'm not looking at it like, I just want to break even, to be honest. Like, and I hope that's what happens. It'd be nice to make a buck, but I really just want to break even. I want to finish this love letter to because I grew
Yeah.
up on this like you guys did, you
Yeah.
know. So to me, this brought so many memories. Like I said, it was moving when I saw that book. Like it meant a lot to me. It was like my childhood, my teenage years, even my adult years in some cases were kind of in that book. And that's kind of how I feel, but if that makes sense. Like
Oh,
it's
No,
real personal.
congratulations. It's like having a
yeah.
baby. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh
I
right.
was really afraid my first kid was going to be ugly. And when you see him and he's just beautiful, you're like, wow, woo.
I could just pull this book out. It wasn't. It's beautiful.
It was beautiful. I did it right.
My
No,
children in the
man.
background crying. He doesn't love us.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
You have
But
every
this
reason
book,
in the
yeah.
world to be
I'm just
proud. You have every reason in the world to be proud of what you've done. So,
Yeah.
thanks,
Yeah.
man.
It
yeah, good
definitely
job.
does. It definitely is a love letter. You do this one thing, and I wasn't actually going to bring it up because it's really just like a subjective thing that I like. You start your chapters with like quotes from literature. I love that because it kind of like cues the reader into like what you're kind of going to for in this
Yeah.
particular chapter, adventure, whatever, thematically, tone and stuff. And it's that kind of thing that like also kind of um elevates the book beyond just oh, this is a dungeon crawl with goblins. There's something more to it, you know what I mean? So this definitely is like awesome. So and
Thanks.
I hope you do break even, and I hope you actually make a ton of money, because you deserve it, you really do.
Thanks, man.
So we've got roughly 5 minutes. We did say we would let you go get some sleep.
Right.
Um, but
I'll stay
it's
longer. I've got some
well,
energy
no,
now. You guys
hey,
got me
man,
going.
I got 3 kids. I understand, bro. Do what you got to do. It's like I felt like I was dipping last week, just kind of just stay awake. I heard somebody say once that the United States was the only place where you could create this great work of art that would live forever. It'd be remembered forever. And as soon as you're done with it, somebody will ask you, so what are you doing next? Um, and I'm just curious, man. Are you when all of this, are
Yeah.
you running this game? Are you running another game that you're making notes for that you're just doing for fun on the side? What do you have any plans at all after this?
So
Sorry.
no, that's a great question. I'm trying to answer. I'm trying to be succinct about it because I tend to like ramble, if you haven't noticed.
Go for it.
So
Go for it.
I
That's why
try.
you're here. So we
Yeah,
don't ramble. Go for
no.
it.
So I guess the real quick answer. I'm trying to be quick with it. Is it depends on how well this one does. If like so again, very open. Man, I'm sure you see the updates, but I think I need to make about 120 to 130 grand to truly break even on this one. I made 108 last time, before all the back late or pledges. I think I made like 115 with them. So like if I make about 120, 130, I think that's very possible because first time I only made 35, and then I went to. So I'm not saying I'll get triple, but I think I could get 150 to 180. I think very realistically.
Yeah.
So, and I like my average pledge point last time was like 90 something dollars, and my special was 99, so it was just a little bit less. And this time, everyone's going to be coming in for the $179 trilogy with the slipcase. So I think that based on the number of orders, I have like about 550 to 600 VIP signups already who've already put $299 up front.
Awesome. That is great.
Yeah. So the percentage is like 80-90% of them will certainly back, and they've kind of informed me on what they're going to do. So I think first day I could make 60 to 70 grand first day possibly, and that's just from them. So if other people see that, they get excited, and that's ooh, we're they want to jump on the train. Ooh, success, yay! So hopefully, if that works, it could do really well. So if it does, if I break even or better, and I'm going to make 20 or 30 grand probably on sales on the back end when it releases the drive-through. That's because usually that's what happens. And the more books you have, the people, I was waiting to buy all three, and then they show up and they buy all three.
Right. Yeah.
So, like the first time I made about 12,000 from the first volume in about 6 months. And then the second volume released this November 4th. And from there till the end of December, I made about 13. So like and there were actually more volume 1 sales than there were volume 2. So it's, it's going to keep, building. So if all that goes well, and I think it will, with an educated guess, then I can proceed. So if that happens, what do I do next? So I'll be honest, I'm not sure. I have a couple of ideas, very strong ideas. The first thing I got to do is I'm like, okay, I would like to renovate my condo. So that means I need a little bit more money. Because that's really my wife's condo. So I have to make her happy for everything she did for me the last 9 years. So really, it's not mine. It's for her. So for me, that means 5E conversion. So everyone I know plays it because that's easy, right? You just change some DCs, say, Monster Design's probably the roughest in the treasure change, but it won't be 10 million in that. But I can do it because I know it really well. So I really don't have to buy anything for that, So, and Frog God did that. And Necromancer did that kind of a thing. Swords and Wizardry 5E. And I'd always be the guy who bought both, see the difference. So it's just an easy way to like increase your profits. And, that's when I become the profit guy. I think the 5E conversion, but that's not with the OSR. That's with a different crowd. So you guys are cool.
Well, I am not a strictly OSR guy. However, I do have a 10-foot pole to keep 5E away usually.
Gary's I didn't mean this affectionately. He's a filthy story gamer. So
I'm a filthy story gamer.
That's great. I love it. I like all types of games.
Well, I did 23andMe, and I'm roughly 33 to 35% dirty story gamer by ancestry. And but it depends on what game I'm playing, right? It depends on the system. Speaking of which, Matt, we know anyway that it has the stamp on it.
Yeah. I'll run it with Rule Cyclopedia. It'll be awesome.
Hey, actually,
because you only need 7. You only need 7 character classes.
You run it with Rule Cyclopedia, and I'll run it with this, and we will never have a conflict in rules. At no point will we be like, well, actually, it should be like this. No. You will never notice. Just Rule Cyclopedia, BX, OSE, we'll run it. It'll be great.
That's part of my argument. Why do I need to buy OSE? I got the Rule Cyclopedia.
Because
it's the same rules.
because you don't understand in form and function. You know what I mean? With it is. Listen, hold on. I appreciate
This happens
it's
every
the
week, by
reason.
the way.
Oh, it's the reason why vinyl is superior, even though audibly, like I'm going to tell you the truth, audibly, vinyl's not superior. There's all kinds of things, right? But when the entire product is a work of art, right? The paintings on the front, the layout in the middle, the music on the album, and what you get here, yeah, baby, that's right. And what you get here, what you're getting here is like, I mean, look, you can listen to Pink Floyd from your phone on Bluetooth. That's cool. Look at how beautiful that is. Or you can go out and get yourself a nice record player. God damn, bro, I'm getting a little excited, man.
I know.
Look
I know.
at that.
Have you felt you feel your copy, don't you? You go like this and you're
You
like,
know, one of
ooh.
my favorite
Open
one of
up, you're
my
like, oh, look
favorite
at all the
things to do.
tables.
Here's my
Oh,
one of my favorite things to do is just kind of let the box fall open and feel that sort of suction from the air. You
yeah.
know what I mean? Because it's not a cheap box like those old
Mm,
red, blue Bentley
no,
boxes. This is another thing. We got to bring the box set back. We have got the box
I
set
know.
has ah I am so, and I tell my, hey, let me get your opinion on this. And maybe this is just because I still care about being cool or whatever. Let's say I walk a friend into a game. God, that's just beautiful. Oh, it tickles.
OSC
Um,
after dark.
Dark.
so you walk into, we've got this really nice store here in Austin called Dragon's Lair, right? You walk in, on the right, you have comic books, and on the left, you have board games. And then you walk through, and there's more comics and all the tchotchkes, and everybody's doing something in war games. And then you get to this room where people are playing role playing games, and they have these volumes of fucking textbooks out. And it does, if I'm trying to explain to my everyday friends, that's really fun.
Yeah.
It doesn't even look like a game, you know. With the old box sets, you had a big map, right? There was always this, I don't know, I just think, that's beautiful.
I had the T-shirt that he did for Gavin did for his Kickstarter, and I was like, I used to wear it around. I was like, yeah.
I haven't got a t-shirt yet because I have 3 kids that need new clothes every week, but
Real quick, while I
You're like,
hate to
I'm going to
break up,
Target for me.
I really hate to break up this
Go
little
for it,
love
go for it.
fest over OSC.
Sorry.
Brian, buddy of mine, Brian, that I game with pretty regularly, he's got a question for you about
Sure.
the Smithsonian books, all 3 in the case. You're coming in late to Kickstarter 3. Can you get those, I guess?
Yep.
Is that
Yep.
okay?
There's one of the tiers is called Skull God of the North. Clearly that's the one. You could get all 3. It's $179, includes the slipcase, everything, and it's cool. Kickstarter's actually letting me use their beta test for the their pledge manager, because they're trying to say backer kid, screw you. So I get to actually use, I don't have to get backer kick. I avoided it last time too. Everyone's like, what are you doing? I was like, no, I don't want to use, I don't want to learn this weird song. So they luckily reached out to me and said, we want to use your thing in pilot. So I'll have the shipping and everything within Kickstarter. It's really cool. So but yeah, you'll be able to get the 3 books. I'm using a fulfillment company, like essentially multiple fulfillment companies. And I'm really excited about this. Obviously, I've learned a lot after many learning mistakes. And just, learning the industry, it's a lot. You don't realize how much goes into this. And so one of the things I'm trying to do is I really want to help international backers, outside the United States, North America, because I don't want people to not be able to get the book just because of where they're at or whatever. Because the costs are ridiculous. So one of the things I found, one of the things I did last campaign was I capped all the shipping at $50, and I was basically like, everything else I'll eat out of my own profit. And that's what I did. And 25% of my backers were from abroad. So this time I was like, okay, let's get even more clever. Let's use like either multiple fulfillment companies or find one that can do multiple warehouses now that I'm learning it. And so basically I've already found 2, and the prices were way better than last time. And so I'm about 99% sure which one I would go with, Lance. but I haven't made the decision yet. But basically we'll have this stuff go all over, and basically people in Australia won't hopefully pay more than $35-40. So wherever you're at, like US would be really, really inexpensive. No more than 20-22 bucks probably, but I'm not sure, 100%. So, but that's it. They're big books. They're going to be in a slipcase. They're like 15 pounds, like
Jesus.
Well,
5 pounds each with a slipcase. I think, yeah. So, I mean, it's heavy, but I've got a really good fulfillment thing going. So I think this time around, it's going to be very, very good on everyone. So I think the draw of the print on demand books is that they know that drive-through has a really good lane of shipping. It's very cheap.
Mhm.
I sent a book to Australia once and it was like $30, which is really good. Really good. It could be 100.
Oh yeah.
$80.
30 bucks is still, yeah.
So yeah.
I get a lot of stuff from, I'm a Lamentations guy, as most people know. Getting stuff from Helsinki is not cheap. That's why you buy as many books as you can and just do it all at once, but then you end up dropping a couple bills per cycle. So yeah, but yeah, it's tough, and it's interesting that it's kind of like a trial by fire, right? Like you don't know, you're just writing and you want to publish this thing, and then all of a sudden there's all this business end stuff you gotta learn. And I think drive-through RPGs, print on demand, is sort of like the easy way to go. But then
they're great. They're great. I mean, I hear people give them crap all the time, and I'm kind of sitting there going, "Shut up!" Like, no offense, not trying to pick a fight or anything, but shut up. Like literally, they make it possible for like so many people who don't know the first thing about it. And all they take is 30% of your, if you think about all the costs, if you'd had to do this yourself, like that's a great, and they even deal with customer service. Like if Matt or Gary were like, got pissed about their book all banging out, they might reach out to me, but usually I direct them to drive-through because drive-through is supposed to handle it. They do it all, and they promote the people who are successful. Like they've worked with me. They hooked me up. They were a big reason Volume 2 sold so many. In Volume 1, this Black Friday, like they reached out to me and helped me, and I didn't know what I was doing, And they're like, this is what we're gonna do with your book.
Well, that's cool. That's actually the first positive thing I've heard about drive-through in a while.
Well, I'm going to give you another positive about drive-through. Not too long ago, I ordered something relatively small, print on demand, and I feel like their printing quality compared to what I would have gotten 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah,
I feel like they've kind of gotten better, and
really good for print on demand.
Yeah, there's a couple weird things, with drive-through if you care about those things, but I don't. So, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think it's
my
great
book's
for
really
small
big.
publishers.
Yeah, 480 pages and 530 ain't a joke. And I haven't had anyone tell me that it's fallen apart, and mine hasn't fallen apart. And I mean, that's a big ass book. And I used to always hear drive this sucks. And I got my proof copies. I remember for Volume 1, I was like, it's not, it's not Smithsonian 80-pound matte coat, whatever, all that crap. But like, it's a good sturdy book, and it's functional, and it does it's nice, and I've just been really impressed with them overall. I mean, they've got an older site that's a little dinosaur-y when you're using it, but like it's not hard to use.
Actually, I've been on this updated beta site of theirs for about 5 or 6 years now. I don't know if you guys have that, but there's like the old site, and then there's this beta site or whatever.
Up.
Yeah,
they're like, we're never going to convert to it.
But I don't know. I mean,
Why should they?
Yeah, And yeah, it's I don't know
I
if
like the old one actually. I'm like, just embrace the
it
90s.
works,
Right.
man. The big thing is it works and it's easy to navigate and it's easy on the eyes. That's really, what it comes down to. And I know, there are I can think of two right off the bat indie creators that are, kind of have this weird war, or I say weird. They've kind of have, with drive through. But I think if you were to balance out on the scales, how many people are able to elevate what they do because of drive through versus all the other stuff. I mean, overall I think they do good things
Oh, great.
for game. I think they help a lot of people.
Yeah.
So
The
yeah.
third party scene would be so much smaller if they didn't exist.
Yeah, I
It
agree with that.
Really.
I do agree with that.
It
So
I
definitely, I
have,
wouldn't mind. A competitor would be great, right? A
yeah,
competitor, I
yeah.
think
that's
would be
what I
great.
would like to
But
see. Because there are some. I'm a free speech absolutist, so I don't care what you want to be Venger Satanis and have weird tentacle stuff with boobies. Cool.
He
I'm hell.
sent me his
yeah,
stuff and I started flipping through it and I was like, tentacles.
I your trilogy is not going to be the only one that I own. I got Avengers trilogy as well. I love his work. I think he's fun. He's just a little weird. But yeah, I did. That's my only real beef with Drive Through is that they act too much like an editor sometimes, and it's just like just be a storefront. Just let us publish. You have your adult section paywall thing going on. That should be good enough. So that's my only beef. But I do
that little
agree.
corner room with the black curtains that you kind of
Yeah,
slide
like
into
like
when
back in the
nobody's
'80s when
looking,
you
right? Yeah,
go to the
yeah,
VHS
yeah.
store and there's like that one area you're not allowed to go because you're too little.
A lot of people don't know about that anymore, I don't think.
Really?
I remember though. I remember you walk into the store and the PX on
Yep,
base. And you
yep.
saw the soldiers over there like, they
Mm.
look at each other, go, ugh. And then one of them every now and then would look at you and go, "Hey, kid." And you're like, what?
Ah, I always wondered who left those magazines out in the woods, man. Right? Like everybody in the 80s had a place they called the woods. And about once a year, you find a new magazine out there all crinkled up from the rain.
We're
And I
done
was
with it.
always,
It's yours,
yeah,
son.
I was always like, who takes the time to walk into the dirty room in the back of the store, then walk all the way out to the woods?
Yeah, I grew up on army bases, so that's
Wasn't
usually
I gonna reel
project.
us in tonight? Wasn't I gonna
Yeah.
reel us in? Kickstarter. Woo!
Have you seen this OSC? Gary stroking it. I'm giving it $1.
Yeah, this is definitely the late show.
Yeah, for real.
Cinemax after
So
dark.
I'm
Anyway.
I'm curious. You had mentioned real quick. I know where everybody's got to go and everything, but you had said there was a lot of in your book. There were little odes to things here and there. If you had to run any of the original old school modules, right? Any of the basic, just go back. Do you have a favorite? Can you give me a top three?
What
What are the ones you would do?
what are you saying, like early, like
Yeah, you know what? It can be any of them, but I prefer they be, BX or back. You know what I mean? Something
yeah.
80s ish, 70s, 80s.
Well, I've always wanted and have never gotten to run Temple of Elemental Evil. I played the video game over and over and over and over again. Loved it. And always wanted to run the original Temple of Elemental Evil. Never got a chance. I would love to run that with like Tomb of Horrors somewhere in the hills.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah.
just
Oh
just
Matt,
Jesus.
just for a little
Matt's
side.
running it and he's trapped. Like the temple, he's never getting out of the temple with his players, man. He's gonna be playing that for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to go into a tangent about why I think Gary made some serious design mistakes with that module, but um if I were to run it again, like if I were to start that campaign over, I think I instead of using it as a mega dungeon, I think I'd use it as like the home base of like the big bad. And he's just sending out, armies or whatever out from that. And then occasionally players would go in to do whatever and they'd have to navigate through it. But there's
It's
just
like
not enough there's not enough exploration. And it's just the layout just drives me crazy. I want to be able to pick something up and go on the fly, which your book, what you've been doing, you can do. Where this, it's like I sort of feel like Gary Gygax wrote that Jack Kerouac style. He just took reams of paper, taped them together, put it in the typewriter, drank like a bottle of vodka, just started typing and didn't stop until all of a sudden he woke up the next morning and he's got this temple, whatever. And because like it'll start, you'll be like, oh, okay, so there's this water temple, and then later on, it'll be like, oh, this guy doesn't like the dude in the water temple, and you're like, well, why didn't you say this then? It's like this like stream of consciousness and like these ideas he didn't go back. I don't know, but
It's you're the Ulysses of modules, written out of time,
yeah.
different
So,
character POV.
There's
but
like
I love Village of Hamlet. I love Village of Hamlet. It's a great village. Temple.
there's like a is that Dragon's Foot, the where you can go in and you can find like thousands of posts on Temple of Alameda. Well, I've skimmed a lot of them over the years, and there was like a few that were like, this is the perfect way to like fix all the errors. And I was like, oh, I would, that's how I envisioned it. Like I would steal all the work of greater men from who went before me and then like take it with Gary Gygax. And then my original idea was like to copy and paste the original document to a Word document and then fix it with the stuff that the guys came up with and create the perfect version, and then run it with two befores just for the hell of it. Unmodified, exactly as written.
Yeah, I turned that into like a sandbox campaign. So the temple was sort of like, well, in a way, it's like it was like a miniature version of your trilogy. Like, so the temple is sort of like the goal, but there's all these other things you can do in the wilds around it. So the temple is sort of like Tharganon, right, in the Forbidden North, and that seemed to work out, But yeah, there's parts of the temple I'm just like, I wouldn't have done it this way, or I wish it was organized differently. But anyway, but the temple, like elemental temple rooms themselves, are like really interesting. So I don't know.
And it looked brutal. Like that is it the tower where like you like open the door and it's like, hey, there's 30 guys.
Oh yeah, well that's the thing too.
None of them are outside. They're just sitting there like waiting.
Yeah, well that's the thing. Yes! Gary gives you all of this detail for war. Like it's like a war game, and like in that tower that's guarding the temple. It's not even part of the temple. He's like, this is round 1, this is what they're gonna do. Round 2, this is what they're gonna do. Yeah, and it's like it's pretty brutal. It's pretty brutal.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Me and Matt, we're really glad you're here and stay as long as you want, but we were gonna have an argument about the mega dungeon in the last segment. And here's the thing, I have to make a confession.
Let's hear it.
I've made it known. I've played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, but fantasy is not necessarily like my number one genre of things, right? There's certain things about it that are just, whatever. It's good. It's good. I've read all the good stuff. I've played the good games, right? But the dungeon in general is just this odd thing for me, right? It's like this monster hotel. Like you guys take this room and we'll be down here. Watch out for the spike trap. You know what I mean? And a lot of them just don't seem to make sense. So I'm assuming because I haven't read it in detail, I'm assuming there's some kind of, like, you got to have some, with a mega dungeon, like what is there a concept? Is there a story? Or is it literally just a big, massive dungeon? And how do you do that? Session after session after session, you know what I mean? I've never done, not for that long. Matt's been running Temple of Elemental Evil for like a year, or over two. Jesus Christ, dude. Anyway, explain the mega dungeon to me and tell me that I'm wrong about it and all those good things. Either of you, I'm fine with being wrong. But what am I getting wrong about it?
Matt, do you want to, or do you want me to do it? Or what do you?
Well, I mean, you have said in the past that mega dungeons are things that you really like
Sure.
because as you started with Hero Quest. I do really remember that conversation you had with John. Um, so and Castle Tharganon was sort of like the start
Yeah.
of this whole thing. So I was going to ask you, like, in your opinion, what makes a good mega dungeon? Like,
Yeah.
what elements need to be present?
Oh man, that's I've seen podcasts on this, like many of them.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
I
Well, you don't
guess
just have a list. Come on, man.
I guess so for me, I guess the appeal of a mega dungeon is that if it's well designed, like so I take Rapanathuk as sort of my favorite. That's the one I've always ran. I've ran it for almost 20 years. I've ran it since about 03 or 04 when it came out, somewhere around there, 02, maybe a year later. I was a year late to the party, but I I look at it as like a framework for the campaign, and I love it when the best ones like Rapanathuk are totally detailed. I like that, not the ones that are undetailed with stuff dropped in with random tables to make the illusion. I actually like the Rapanathuk. That's why I'm doing Castle Thargan in my books, detailing everything, because that's what I like.
Mhm.
I don't want to have to make something. If I want to add something, it's because I want to, not because I have to. And so I think the first thing is that. So there's only a few products that probably can match that. Like Ardenvool is definitely one I want to finish reading. I've been reading it slowly, piece by piece. Rapanathuk, right? Castle White Rock. I look at Talus, Monty Cook's Talus, as really like an urban mega dungeon because he basically gives a city the mega dungeon treatment, and there is a dungeon under it, even though it's random and not all mapped out. But so to me, it's a framework. It's the entire campaign can work around this site, even if they don't always stay there. There's a story, but the story has to be told through, I guess, emergent play. The story, it's not going to be forced on you. It's something you discover. And there's something in video games this is a big movement in video games called narrative bits or NARBs. Essentially, like the way stories are now told, like if you take a game like Dark Souls or one of those types of games, these games they have almost no story. They have very little. They give you like a line, maybe a dialogue. And what happens is, like, if you remember the old Thief the Dark Project game, which had cutscenes and some story, there was a great example of this. If you all remember the first one with that cutscene.
I don't think I ever. I don't
Okay,
think I ever played
there's
that.
the greatest. You have to go watch the cutscenes at the very least. But let me tell you, it's a surprise when you get there. So this, without giving too much away, but it's an old game. So there's this like thief, Garrett, who's pretty cynical, and there's these two sort of forces that you start learning about, very like off the side, not directly. One of them you encounter directly because you steal from them, and they're religious nuts. They're almost like these Hammerites who are sort of like these Catholic Brotherhood, if you want to think of them. And the guy's just like mocking them and bonks them on the head, takes their stuff, and it's great. I love it. It's funny, and he's always snide, and he's making his comments, and you get this sense over time through like images, little bits of excerpts that there's someone else out there, but the name of it really doesn't come out except in one or two little things that you may or may not find. But you start seeing these little pictures of like this horned being. You start seeing these sprite like images in certain like areas, and through these images and little details that you find, you kind of start to realize that there's some other side of the Hammerite, law chaos kind of dynamic. There is a line that mentions this woodsy lord, and there's these weird guys who speak in this strange tongue, and you have to kind of piece together that this is all connected. Like it doesn't come out and say this
Mhm.
to you. You figure this out because you find this detail A, B, C, D. So a lot of like that's a great thing. And then of course there's this cutscene where you find out that oh shit, it's real. I'll leave it at that. But basically, like for those of you that know the story, that moment hits you because you're still skeptical until it happens. It's like not being a believer and then finding something that's in your face that makes you believe. It's like, whoa, and you saw hints of it along and didn't process it. So like a lot of new games now, years later, that's how they tell the story. Totally. They don't even do cutscenes. If they take you away from playing video games for a second, they lose you. And so they can't. And they can't even do the ones where the guy's walking and talking and it's a cutscene which makes you think it isn't, but it is. They can't even really do that much anymore. And so they've moved to this sort of NARB focused type thing where they drop these NARBs in. And their idea is that you're going to be able to, you find object B and then object F and then object Z out of order, not in A, B, C, D order, out of order, but over time and by themselves, each one is insignificant. But over time, all these details come together and they tell A, B, C, D, F, G all the way to Z. And in that same way, like the Thief of the Heart. And so you figure out the story when you finally get enough pieces and you go, wait a minute, this was, I remember something about that image on that wall and that little piece of letter I read. And no one said anything to you. There was no cutscene, right? And so to me, when I think of a mega dungeon at its peak, that is what's going on. It has all this history that the narrator or the writer knows, maybe in his lore document, maybe he includes in the product, maybe he doesn't. But to me, it gives you choices. The players have choices on how they want to go through it. They can go left, they can go right. It informs you enough about those choices at every step of the way that you can make meaningful choices. It's not just flipping a coin. Let's go left or right. It's left has a scrape down it that is odd and some green blood, and right smells cheese. You know? And so you know where you're going, at least in some detail. You know that every choice could be informed at least partially. And later on, you'll go, oh crap, that's what that was. That wasn't cheese. Should have went the other way, but whatever, And then on top of that, there's also depth and history in the site. The site itself is the object, right? Exploring that site, which itself is a character and has its own lore. You're learning that through these NARBs, through this broken statue, through this, why is it, there's a woman on the ground, a broken statue of a woman with a long face. Why is she long? Later on, you see the same woman in a different pose with a son, with a child. She doesn't have one in the first statue. See what's being said without being said. To me, a mega dungeon is a vehicle for storytelling. And to me, it's one of the greatest for a game because it's giving you total agency within a reasonable bounds, like a sandbox. Your parent says you get to play in the sandbox. You can't go out of it because there's dangers and whatnot, or I'll lose you, whatever. But within that sandbox, you can kind of do whatever you want. And so the mega dungeon to me is that's what a hex scroll, the volume 1, 2, 3. To me, it's all one dungeon, really. That's how I look at it. It's just there's the dungeons over there, but really it's all a sandbox and it's all cut off from the rest of the world. And there is a boundary, and I'm trying to do the same thing everywhere, even if it seems hyper focused on a dungeon, literally in the third book. And I guess that's my long-winded answer. So
no, that makes sense. That was a great answer.
That's actually right along the lines of what I've been thinking about lately too. And I think it's one of the reasons why I was actually turned off of dungeon crawling back in the early days of my entrance into the hobby. I was on the Hickman Revolution, doing epic quests and doing all this crazy stuff. And then even in the past few years, I really like Sandbox, just on the hex crawl, just doing all that kind of stuff, hitting specific points. But Gods of the Forbidden North, has got me thinking about for the past few years now, what is a mega dungeon and what makes it good, and then playing Temple of Elemental Evil and comparing it to my experience with Rapanathuk, and that is how I pronounce it, Rapanathuk. Why the mega dungeon? And it seems to me like you're 100% right about that history, that character, and that it's 100% about exploration to me. Like the faction play is cool. combat's cool, but if you're playing OSR, sometimes it's good to avoid combat, right? So it's like, so why are we going down in there? It's like the treasure, yeah, that's part of the game, but like, from a character's perspective, it's the mystery, like what is this place? And I really started thinking about it. You mentioned this video game. My son got into a game called Hello Neighbor. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's basically like this like horror game where you see the neighbor like put a kid in the
Yep.
basement, and so like you go in to try to like unlock the basement and save this kid, and all the while the neighbor, if he hears you, he'll chase you, so you have to sneak around. And each level of the game gets more complex, and what you will walk into a room and there will be like, and it's kind of a cartoony, it's not very realistic, it's very cartoony, but the one wall will have like, let's say, all these pictures on the wall, all but one are circle, like portraits, and then there's one square. You don't even interact with them. It's not like you can move the cursor over, right? But that one square is a clue to something elsewhere in the neighbor's house. And I'm like, to me, that's how a mega dungeon should be drafted, right? Like there's something that is described to you. And this is going back to the whole text box thing, and why I think text boxes need to come back. The game master is telling you something important. You should be taking notes, or you're going to get screwed down the road because you didn't pick up on something, So, yeah, I'm 100% with you. That's kind of how I see mega dungeons too. They are intimately connected with the lore of the world too, and so they're part of the world building. And that go back to like how much I really like what you've done with Gods of the Forbidden North. I mean, like it's all integrated, man. I mean, really well, and not this, but to the viewers, it's all integrated. Like it's
Gary.
it's
I was gonna say, thanks, man. Gary, I was gonna say to add to your narrative love, because I like narrative games. They're a lot of fun, and like Walking Dead, Free League, all this,
Right.
Everyone knows they're gonna die. It's cool, but we all enjoy it, So like, I think another thing that's cool about Mega Dungeon play is that I grew up on the adventure path per se. A lot of the adventures, second edition, of course, was infamous, right, for almost railroading you. And I feel, of course, like I mean, I get what they were trying to do, and sometimes it does work. You can achieve that if you do it right. But I feel like even when you do like a regular adventure, it has to feel like little sandboxes, but there's a choke point that moves you, and then it gets back to a sandbox, and then a choke. Like that's how I think it's when it works. That's how it works. That's how it has to work.
Right.
So for me, like that's what a mega dungeon really is. It's like, and when you have that kind of structure, it allows you to the narrative part, like you're telling your own stories because no one's telling you have to go this way to get through this. You have to, but it's all there for the DM. So really, he's just responding. And I like to use the term referee most. That's what I always call myself as a referee, because I'm responding, and the players start telling their own story because they're making the decisions. And just like a video game, right? Like you get to choose how you and where and what you do for a lot of these games now. And that's the idea, is like you got to get out of the way. One of the things they teach in game writing is you tell like a lot of traditionally trained writers, like linear storytelling writers, like film writers and novel writers and all those types of people, those creeps. You tell them like, hey, look, you have to let go of being in control of the story. You gotta be willing to turn it over to the player. And I think Mega Dungeon literally does that. It's saying, yeah, here's our parameters, here's our setting, but the players get to decide. Do you want to be a bunch of cowards? Do you want to be a bunch of heroes and die young?
And I think that's really similar to the way most dirty story games go as well, is that you have this sort of free reign over a certain setting, right? And then, at least the way I do it, there are events that I know are going to happen, right? Instead of a room you're going to walk into, these things are going to happen eventually, right? I don't know. I may not know exactly when or when the player, but eventually this will happen, and the players are kind of on their own. But, we were talking earlier, Matt, we were talking about text boxes. And I've been wanting to say this, even when you're playing a game where you really want your characters to take the lead, and it's your game and your world, and this happens and I'm fighting and trying to get better because I know that ultimately this is something that lands on me. When your players look at you like they don't know what to do, but you feel like you've kind of given them like all these options, and they're like, oh, no, I don't know, you know. Whereas going back to that text box when you're in a dungeon and the GM says, hey, real quick, let me read you this. Everybody knows that's important. You know, I mean, everybody knows, oh shit, I better, you know what I mean? Whereas this game that we're playing, you know, I'm dropping clues and I'm not good enough at, you know, we're kind of playing a mystery-ish, you know,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And I think I just need to be more, you know, the clue doesn't need to be something you notice. It needs to be an anvil that drops on your goddamn head. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that, but it's similar, right? You guys have a lot of leeway, and then it kind of choke points. You know, you use your word into the thing that moves it forward. So it's not that. I mean, I guess it's not that different.
And the trick with that is, you probably know, is like is giving the clue multiple times in multiple different ways, right? That 3 rule clue. I think Justin Alexander, whatever his name was,
Yeah,
did Alexandrian had an article on that. But like I've thought about that a lot when I've designed my adventures. I'm like, well, like I want there to be like 3 ways at least that you can tackle this. You know, like even if it's not a mystery or something, if it's beating the bad guy, you know, like
right,
I'm gonna do it this way, and this is what I'm assuming these morons will do first. But you know, they might get clever, and if they do this, I'm not trying to snuff them, but I want to, it'll create these consequences, trying to make 3
right.
different, like, and maybe there is a shortcut way to make this a little easier, but you know, it's and always trying to complicate things as much as you can. That was a lot of that was probably the hardest work I think I've done so far on both volumes, and I don't know if it comes out unless you play it. But like, and that's why I was really proud of chapter 17, Malum Hades, that death trap dungeon, my ode to the Tomb of Horrors. You know, like I really spent a lot of time on that chapter, and I was doing just that. Like, what are all the possibilities here? I want to give multiple ways of solving it, justify it in and out
Yeah.
of the game, and make it where each one has its own set of problems. And I was very proud of that work. But yeah, going back, what's the narrative game you're playing, by the way? Can I ask?
Well, we're actually using Heroic, which is Bear the Gen X GM's take on Marvel superheroes. It's a
Yeah,
universal
yeah.
table game,
I've
and
never
we're
played that,
doing
but I've heard of it. Yeah,
yeah. So it's in beta still. Um, and right now, what we're playing is called The Row. It's a 1920s sort of pulp hero,
that's right.
just before superheroes. And we're playing at low level, real kind of, you know, street level stuff. Um,
Yep.
and I don't really. Here's the thing. So the game that I wanted, that I thought we were going to play, was going to be sort of a 1960s Silver Age, you know, kind of thing. And then when me and Matt and another player got together to start making kind of talk about things, one guy just started rolling up like a dude, like I am not rolling up. He started creating, like he was like halfway kind of looking at us, and he was like, he's got guns. And then Matt's in the other frame going, mud core, mud core, mud core. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, all
Yeah.
right, well, we can't do like masks and capes because that's just not going to fly. And I had this idea. So for probably one of the things my players don't know, probably the past 10 to 15 years, all my games take place in the same universe, right? Like if you're playing a modern game, it takes like this is my Earth. I have my cities. It's easier for me. I've already got my, you know what I mean? I've already got everything together. You're just passing through, right? So I said, well, shit, you know, let's do this game. It's going to be 1920s. Prohibition is in effect. But
Yeah, it is.
we got this small little spot that's been carved off since the Revolutionary War. It's they call it the Row. There's this thing called the E Street Treaty, which basically if you keep crime right here and don't let it out there, nobody's gonna tell you anything. So it's just
It's awesome.
brothels, speakeasies, opium dens, and then looking at the literature of the time, yeah,
Ninjas.
there's, you know, you've got the ninja. It's real magic, sort of occult based. Because when we finish with this, I tend to run short campaigns, like under. I want to tell. I like beginning, middle, and ends. But then what we'll do is after this ends, we'll maybe have a little time jump. There's a World War II, that era of comics. I want to do a short, like kind of a short adventure, sort of an over there World War II in Europe. And then I want to do Rocket Age, which is that Silver Age.
Rocket Man
I've
stuff.
Yeah, and I've already got it. It's so in my. I've already got this. I haven't started writing anything, but it's in the '60s in the New Mexico desert. You know what I'm saying? And the real goal, the whole thing in my mind is I remember what it was two things. It was that old series Heroes, that first season.
Oh, I
And
remember
that was
that. Yep.
that was such a good season of television that just got destroyed.
Yeah.
And then what was that movie that Landis kid wrote about it was four boys. Michael B. Jordan was in it when he was younger. They all got superpowers, but it wasn't really a
I don't recall
superhero
that.
movie. But the whole thing is one of the kids was like, no, 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 we're the apex predator. Nobody can stop us. It's our duty to, you know what I mean? Like we are in charge. And so, kind of the impetus for this whole thing is to have us create this whole comic book universe with this history. And if I can work it out, I mean, like, why wouldn't Superman stop the bomb? Why wouldn't they fucking take over? You know what I mean? Like, how far can I push these players? You know what I mean? Like, what can we do? But right now, we're just,
Fun.
street level in the 20s. We'll see what happens. But it's fun. I will
Yeah.
never write it out the way you have because I cannot. Sitting down for this right now is torture, man. Like I am bouncing and I don't have. Matt's a lawyer and he can sit and just pumps. You know what I mean?
I have ADHD real bad, so I'm the same way.
Oh,
But then I got my meds,
phew.
so I
See,
can I can focus.
yeah, I didn't come from a part of the country where they were like, "Go get some meds." They were like, "Boy, just go outside. All right, go
He's
shoot
just raising
something.
wild.
Why don't you just go shoot something? God damn, boy." Set that pile over there on
You
fire
look
for me.
like a monkey fucking a football.
Yeah, I remember. I remember there was this. Oh my god, dude! Like I love where I grew up, and I love the people I grew up with. But I swear to God, I remember one time reading, and this old neighbor walks by. I'd read out like in the yard because we didn't have air conditioning, and it was hot in Texas. And this neighbor walks by, and he goes, "Boy, what you reading for? Not what you reading. Not is it good? Or what you reading for?" And I'll just, you know what I mean? When I told,
No,
I'm gonna tell you another true story. When I told my mom, I said, Mom, I think I'm high school. It's like towards the end of the junior year, and I had really had no interest in going to college. But some little snooty bitch told me I couldn't get into a school, so I was like, "Oh fuck you, I'll go to college now, right?" And so I told my mom, I
you're
said,
wrong.
"Yeah," I did go for a little while. Um, I told her, I said, "Mom, I think I want to go to college." And she looked, she's like, what's wrong? Can you work? What's wrong with you? Is something broke?" Like she started looking at me like, shaking my
Yeah.
true stories, true stories.
my
So
mom's from Pensacola, Florida, and she would say when she went in the army at 17, she's like the file. This is the filing cabinet, the file. And then my
I
dad
won't.
was from Norfolk, is what they say. Norfolk. You heard that? I was like
Mhm.
Norfolk, but Dad, why you pronounce it that way? And they're really we're from the South. Like
Yeah,
they're right there, and you're because they're right there, they have to. It's really funny.
yeah.
You're just like, what? You're like, no, you're not. You're right there in the middle. But
I swear to God, you
they're
get two or
fighting
three
words.
drinks in me. You get two or three drinks in me. I start sounding like Teeter from Yellowstone. God damn, I don't been telling you. Shit. It's like over yonder, and you gotta pick it up. You goddamn rocking your brains, motherfucker. Anyway. Hey Rob, this has been great, man. We've kept you for a long time, and I know you got a life
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
kids and all that kind of good stuff. And I can't thank you enough. I really Me and Matt have talked about doing some things with your books, and I just think they're great. And I can't thank you enough for being our first guest. So thanks for
Thank
being here,
you.
man.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Rob. I do appreciate it. I wish you all the best with this latest
Thanks.
Kickstarter, but I have a feeling you're going to do
I
all
think
right,
so,
hope
man.
all things considered.
No,
So
thanks for having me. I
Awesome.
really enjoy the time here, and ask me on again later. I'll come back. You guys are fun, man. We had a game again, by the way. I want to say this out
oh
loud.
yeah,
By the way, I've gamed with Matt, and he's great. He's fantastic. It's very
Thank
rare
you.
that I play with another DM and I like look approvingly upon them because I'm the eternal DM, of my groups always. So I enjoyed myself so much. I was like, oh, I can just let go and get eaten.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was great. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm the same way though. Like whenever and Gary, don't take this the wrong way. Whenever I'm a player, I can't help but judge. I'm just like, I don't know if I would have done it that way.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, this is all
And
right.
isn't it nerve-wracking, like playing for somebody that you know is a good game master, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't care if you've run your own game, but like when you've played with somebody like Matt and this friend of mine, Brian, right? They're our friend Brian. They're really good, to the point where I'm always like, oh, okay, it takes me a good 5 or 10 minutes to kind of get in my skin, you know what
yeah.
I mean, and be okay
Bring
with
A
it.
game.
But I think 2025 is the year of Gary as a player. I'm gonna run this superhero game, and man, this forever DM thing is bullshit. We got to get that out of my head and out of everybody else's head as well. Because if you
Yeah.
don't, man, it's a whole other topic. You got to play games. Sorry, I'm keeping you past your bedtime. My
No,
bad.
no, 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 no. I'm having fun.
Yeah, I did.
Well, on that note, I just dropped a link into the my Discord, an invite. If you're not in it, you're more than welcome to join. We're trying to do a gaming server, so Gary doesn't want to be a DM; he wants to be a player. So come on over. And while we're on that topic, so I made a mistake somewhere along the lines. I don't know exactly how that mistake happened, but I have a physical hard copy of volume 2, and then I have my soft cover volume 2. I don't know how I got a second one. I must have spaced out and ordered it twice.
Or I'm not a great businessman.
Or maybe you just sent it to me. Oh, Lord Mattis, he's a good guy. Here you go.
Whoops.
So I'm going to announce our first giveaway, and basically I'll create a little spot on my Discord server. Join the Discord server, and if you back volume 3 and send me, I don't know, a screenshot of the confirmation, and I'll have a little section for it on the Discord. At the conclusion of the Kickstarter and everything's wrapped up, we'll do a little raffle or something, and I'll send you
cool.
volume 2. So, and I'll remind people, till the end. So but anyway, yeah. So join the Discord. We'd love to have you.
Offload the crap I don't want on your show too. No.
Bro, I was just as he was doing that, I was just thinking about my bookshelf, and I'm like, dude, we can give away these 5 ebooks.
Get rid of
That's
all this
horrible.
stuff.
That's why would I say
Well,
that? Why would I say that? Oh my god.
I have some indie stuff that I'm probably never gonna play. So I'm like, I could probably use these as giveaways, but then I'm like, no one's gonna want them because they've never heard of them. You ever heard of Nibiru?
Nibiru?
Yeah. I picked it up
Planet X?
Nibiru?
Where the Nephilim come from? They're only a few years away. Sorry, Nibiru. That's my bad.
I'm not going to get into it. It's some weird story game that I picked up 4 years ago, and I've never played it, and I never will play it. But I don't think anyone's going to want it.
If I got rid of
maybe it'll go to eBay.
If I got rid of all the games on my shelf that I was never going to play, I'd have 3 left. Really? Yeah, I think maybe 4. Maybe 4.
You guys know James M. Spawn. He's got a Kickstarter up right now. He's doing the white box thing, and he did that Hero's Journey, Right Star.
Oh yeah.
He's done a ton of stuff. He's all over the place. He did Lord of the Rings. He's done a lot of the IPs. So he was one of my writers for volume 2, and at one point he actually lives like right in Maryland, but like I'm in Delaware, but he's like right across the line, so it's like really just Delaware. But he's Maryland, so he's real close to me. And so one day he like hits me up randomly. He's like, "Hey Robert," he goes, "I'm trying to get rid of all these books." So I'm like, "What are they?" And he's like, "Well," and he starts like doing his like salesman stuff on me. And it's like this whole box of like all the basic D&D line of Mystera and all this other stuff, and the encyclopedia, everything. And it was all James Spahns' collection. He's just trying to offload it for money, for cheap and easy money. And so I'm like, I was kind of gullible, and I okay, yeah, I'll buy from you. So I give him like $400 or whatever the hell he has for, and he's like hustling me. It's so great thing. So I get this box, and he mails it to me, and now I'm just like, I don't know where to put it. So now I'm like, what are we gonna do with this box? So like maybe Matt, we could give away James Spahns' BX collection, like one book at a time on every show. Like I'll bring it to you somehow. We'll get it, because like that's like the first thing I gotta also. And we like James Spahn himself.
Yeah.
This. I don't know.
You gonna pay shipping on that, Matt? You should make them pay shipping, dude.
No, no, this is a giveaway.
$45.
It's really heavy.
It is. You can. It doubles as like home defense. You can hit somebody with this.
And I'll send you this free book. Oh. And here we are.
Yeah. All right.
You'll pay for it.
Yeah. Why not?
Oh. Well, man, it's been great. We're coming up on midnight. I gotta pee like something crazy. I ain't kidding, man. I'm trying to be like polite about this, but we all played D&D in the 80s, which means we ain't held it this long since yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. For real.
Hold my axe. I gotta piss. Yeah.
It's time to go.
All right. Well, Rob, once again, thanks for coming. Everybody who joined us tonight, thank you very much. And again, the Kickstarter this Tuesday, 9 a.m., Volume 3, Gods of the Forbidden North. Do it, love it. And if you're interested in getting a free copy of Volume 2, get on my Discord. And I actually have an outro now. So I'll click on that.
Shit.
And then we'll be
Do I gotta be quiet?
Yes.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
Get up.